Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of 1 Million Cups. My name is Nicholas Stamper, and I'll be hosting today's presentation. First, I'm going to talk for a few minutes about 1 Million Cups Chico and its mission, and the second thing will be the actual presentation given to us today by our special guest. The presentation will be 6 minutes long. And the third we'll cover is a Q&A for our audience, and then shortly after that, we'll wrap up. 1 Million Cups was created by the Kauffman Foundation. The purpose of this foundation works alongside educators, researchers, and other partners to better understand and improve the environment in which entrepreneurs start and grow businesses. 1 Million Cups is a free weekly program to educate, engage, and connect local entrepreneurs. It's an environment where you get to be able to have different conversations with different entrepreneurs. The overall mission behind 1 Million Cups is to, again, not only lower the barrier of access to education and resources for all entrepreneurs, but to be surrounded by a community and an environment that helps you build ideas and get feedback for your business. In the beginning, 1 Million Cups started off small in Kansas City, and then today it has grown to 131 communities. Moving forward, at each location, there are presentations each week. Today, we have our awesome presenter, Jeff Grief, with Plumas Wood Fiber. Jeff's going to have 6 minutes to present, and then 15 to 20 minutes of Q&A. If you want to learn more about 1 Million Cups or how to present here, please feel free to join our amazing community online and visit our platform at www.1millioncupscom/Chico. All right, Jeff, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Okay, thank you, Nicholas. And thanks to everyone for this opportunity to learn. And I think I see Ava there. Good morning, Ava.
Good morning, Jeff.
Okay, so let me tell you my story. I was a building inspector down in the city of Cupertino near San Jose, and I bought a piece of property up here in the mountains, in the woods, and I came up here on my vacations and worked on it, built a little cabin to retire in. So in August of 2020, I retired up here, and I had been participating with the Fire Safe Council here in the area to a certain extent because I was aware of the fire danger up here, right? Well, then about a year later, the Dixie Fire rolled across my property and did not burn my house or the trees around my house because I had done the thinning and underburning work that the Fire Safe Council said to do. So I feel very fortunate that I had them as a resource to help me do all of that. So that made me very aware of the issue of forest biomass. We need to reduce biomass in the forests in order to reduce fire severity. And I'm not the only house that was saved by this kind of work. So there was kind of a sense of emergency up here in the mountains about that because of the severe fires that we've had, and people were looking for different kinds of solutions. And so through web surfing and whatnot, I ran across this idea of processing forest biomass into horticultural wood fiber as a substitute for peat moss. Okay, so there's a pretty long story with peat moss. It's been the most popular substrate for growing plants in pots around the world since like World War II. But now there are problems with peat moss. It's a carbon sink. People think it should be left there. It's also just plain expensive. So the horticultural industry is looking for a substitute for peat moss. That, to me, is the big driver here, is that they need something. They've got a problem. And in Europe, for the last couple of decades, progress has been made on this. There's about a dozen companies in Europe now that are they're processing conifer wood chips into horticultural fiber as a replacement or supplement for peat moss. Hi, Clint. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, Jeff.
So as I'm just getting started with my intro here, Clint. So I encountered this idea that that biomass can be converted into wood, into horticultural wood fiber, and began researching it. And the more I researched it, the better it looked. I contacted a researcher in North Carolina by the name of Brian Jackson, who works with North Carolina State University. And he has been studying horticultural substrates for all of his career, and he focuses on wood fiber as a substrate for the horticultural industry. And he has been a big help to me. One of the first actions that I've taken as I've been pursuing this is to send to Brian Jackson in North Carolina 6 pallets of wood chips that he's using to begin analytic testing, do a series of analytic testing on those wood chips to determine the characteristics of Western wood species for this purpose. So conifer species around the world have been used to make horticultural substrate, but Western wood species haven't been tested for it yet. So this is groundbreaking research there. He's in the midst of doing that research. So I've been, haven't been an entrepreneur in my life. I haven't done anything like this. So I figured that if I'm going to do it, I need to get the best information that I can, such as going to a researcher like Brian Jackson, and such as going to the Small Business Development Center, and which I did. And Clint Cobley was assigned to me as my helper, and he has been giving me a great deal of advice about how to proceed. So that's kind of what I've been doing over the last year, is figuring out how do I proceed with this. If I want to actually set up a facility in Plumas County that is going to receive and process wood chips into this horticultural fiber and ship it off to the horticultural industry, how do I get something like that going? It's the cost of putting in the facility is going to be in the area of $6 to $10 million. Have to find a site for it, and all these different things that need to be done. So for the last year, I've been looking at all this and beginning, but I realized I kind of need to make a commitment myself to doing all of the things that need to be done. I can't do this in a half-measured way. I've got to realize what all the steps are and take action on all the steps to make it happen. And that's what I'm beginning to do now. So what I've done thus far is written a business plan. I've been talking to as many people in the county as I can. I've been researching grants and loans to find out what the criteria are for doing something like this. So just briefly, what it would entail would be purchasing a machine that's manufactured by a company in Holland, actually, which is a subsidiary of a Canadian company. And the machine itself costs $1 million. And then buying baling equipment, which takes the fiber and compresses it into bales and puts it on pallets. So those machines are kind of big. They take up a big floor space. They're expensive. I need a big building to house the machines in. So then obviously I need a big lot to put this on with a big building. And as a matter of fact, just yesterday, I was speaking with a landowner in the local area here in Quincy who has a piece of land that's available, a 6-acre lot. And so I may be entering into a lease agreement with him. He likes the idea of the project. And so he wants to help me out with it. He offered to, it's just a bare lot. There's no buildings on it. He offered to lease it to me for 1 year at a low price just for me to hold on to it. Now that's really important because when you're applying for grants, here's my main conundrum. When you apply for grants, they want to see that you've got a lot. If you're doing a manufacturing operation like this, they want to see that you've got a piece of property and you've got engineering on it and planning approvals and that kind of thing. So they want to see that you have a lot in order to get funding. But how do you get a lot without funding, right? So it's kind of a conundrum. How do you make progress with that? It's a catch-22 sort of thing. But this landowner, very accommodating and flexible, he's willing to give me a 1-year lease on the property at a low rate, as I said, which gives me a toehold on the property so that when I'm applying for grants, I can tell them that I have identified a lot, while at the same time, it's not costing me, a heck of a lot of money now, and I have the option to buy the lot later. Now, that's a similar conundrum to what you're faced with, what I'm faced with in applying for grants in general, because many of the grants require that you have matching funding for the grant. So if you want to get a grant from CAL FIRE Business and Workforce Development, they require a 1 to 2 grant, which means they'll give you $1 million if you've got $2 million lined up already. Okay. The USDA Wood Innovations grants have a 1-to-1 requirement. So they'll give you $1 million if you've already got $1 million lined up. But how do I apply for the CAL FIRE grant if I don't have any other funds? How do I apply for the USDA grant if I don't have any funds, even though both of those funds would supply the matching that's required for the other, but I can't apply for one until I have the other. See, so it's kind of an odd conundrum. But in speaking with the grant overseers at the USDA and at CAL FIRE, it seems there may be some ways around this, but I'm a little unclear on that right now. So where I stand is I am putting together all the materials that I can. I've got this possibility for the site, but the other thing that I realized that I really need to do is to get into the horticultural market. This whole thing is based upon the idea that that nurseries and other businesses that make potting soil are going to want this product, but I have to find out what's going on with them. I've got to do marketing. I can't just come at this from a forestry perspective. I've got to come at this from the perspective of the horticultural industry. So what I plan to do in the coming months is to begin to approach the different potential buyers for this. And I've made a list of about 50 different businesses in the state of California that could use this material. It's basically a substitute for peat moss. So any business that is making potting soil it would be interested in it. There are several different businesses that would be interested in this. There are some very large nurseries that make their own potting soil. They have big mixing yards because they use so much, they make their own. Most nurseries buy pre-made mixes from different companies. So I would be selling to those companies that make the mixes. Or I could be selling to the big nurseries that make their own mixes. Then there are companies like SunGrow that make bags of potting soil that you see when you go down to the local nursery, right? And that's a big business, a very big business. So I could potentially sell to them. And then there are a lot of local kind of like landscaping yards that provide all kinds of different landscaping materials. And some of them also will supply potting soil. And so they, I think, are potential buyers as well, because they will take the material in bulk. So what I plan to do in the coming months is contact as many of them as I can and try to get letters of support from these potential buyers, because those would be the best letters of support as I apply for grants, et cetera. And I've been working with, I'm sorry, what is his name? Jason Miller, with the cohort, the prototyping cohort. And
Yeah,
he is, pardon?
Josh Miller.
Josh Miller, yes. And that is a very valuable seminar workshop that I'm doing, where he's showing me how to prototype the idea that you have and put it in front of potential buyers to get input from them about what they need. So that'll be the hardest step for me, I think, is kind of making cold calls to people and to talk to them about this. There's something in me that's just kind of nervous about doing cold call salesman stuff. And I've never done that kind of thing before. So that's kind of a personal hurdle that I need to deal with and overcome. But that's what I'll do in the coming months. So that's a basic summary of what I'm doing. Questions, comments?
Good job.
Good job.
Good job. Good job. Good job.
Thank you.
Really cool.
All right, I'm gonna ask questions. All right, what is the global market size? Like, what is the global, like, the global number with dollar signs?
I
Market.
have not seen specific global numbers except the generalization that horticultural substrates is $1 billion industry worldwide. And I think the reason that they don't have really specific numbers on it is because it's largely regional. Here in North America, we know that Canada exports 1.3 million tons of peat moss to the United States every year. But that's only a portion of what the total substrates, horticultural substrates market is. And what happens, peat moss is kind of an exception. It comes from a long distance because it's an exceptional material. But a lot of the materials that get used come from local sources, and there are not firm statistics on what all those local sources is. So it's kind of an interesting aspect of this business, which is that it is largely locally based. And so you don't know what all the different factors are. I wish I had firm statistics on that. They keep firm statistics on like how much fertilizer is used in the state of California, but they don't. The state doesn't keep firm statistics on how much potting soil or substrate is used. So I don't have a firm answer for you on that, Ava.
Okay. Okay. Then my next question would be around the top 3 contracts you would like to have with different providers. Like who would be your ideal customers?
Yeah. The ideal customers would be like SunGrow. SunGrow is one of the, if not the largest supplier or manufacturer of potting soils and other landscaping materials like that. So if you go to your local nursery and you see all those bags, some of them are likely going to be from SunGrow. They have a huge yard in Sacramento. As well, there's Scott's Miracle Grow. They make a great deal of soil. Then there's another company whose name escapes me right away, but they're pretty popular on the West Coast. They're not as big as SunGrow and Miracle Grow, which are nationwide. But once again, this is a regional thing. So if I did sell to SunGrow, I would be selling to their mixing yards that are located in the state, serving the state market. So SunGrow wouldn't take my product and sell it in South Carolina. And then the other thing that I need to investigate is the large scale nurseries. I plan to go to San Diego to visit the San Diego Flower and Plant Association, which is the largest trade group of wholesale nurseries in Southern California. Because, as I said, there are many large nurseries, commercial nurseries, that do their own mixing. They don't just buy stuff from SunGrow or from the peat manufacturers in Canada. They buy the raw materials. So they'll get peat from the peat manufacturers, but they don't get mixes, soil mixes from the peat manufacturers. They buy the raw materials and make their own mixes. And I need to find out who those large nurseries are so that I can approach them and hopefully deliver trucks to them.
Okay. I have more questions, but I don't want to hog all the questions. So
I'm going to go back to the testing part.
Yes.
What are you looking to find out of that when they're testing these wood species? And I mean, what if something, I don't hate to be negative, but what if something came out of it that it couldn't be used? Or, I mean, is that possible or?
Yeah. So First of all, there's 5 main species that we're testing here. Yellow pine, sugar pine, Douglas fir, white fir, and incense cedar. Those are 5 of the most common species that you'll find in Western forests. And Brian Jackson at North Carolina State University says that these species have never been tested for the purpose before. But conifer species in general are what are used for this. Hardwood species don't work well because they have a lot of phytotoxins in them. But conifer species, as you know, smell like Christmas trees, right? They've got that nice smell. Well, though that smell is terpenes, halenes, other volatile organic compounds, which inhibit plant growth. So that is a problem. But in the process of processing the wood chips into fiber, it drives off a fair amount of that. And then you can let it age for a period of time to let those compounds go. Now, what Brian Jackson is doing with the samples that I sent him is testing the samples to see how much of these volatile compounds are in them and how long it takes to drive them off. I think it's remotely possible that we could discover that some Western wood species are very different from the conifer species they use in other parts of the world to do this. It's remotely possible. I think what's more likely is that we find out just what it takes to use these materials and what we have to do in order to bring them to a state where they will work well for the purpose, how much aging they need, what kinds of treatment would be required so that they will work well. Does that answer the question?
Yeah,
Actually, I'm gonna double click on what she's asking about specific to testing and ask if the people doing the testing are also going to be testing against, say, cocoa peat versus sod peat. Are there going to be, because those are different categories, right? I'm just wondering if that's going to be part of the process.
Yeah. So the general conclusion in the horticultural industry that is making use of wood fiber is that the best thing to do with it is to mix it in with peat moss in different proportions to kind of extend peat moss. So they have done some experiments with using wood fiber as the primary substrate, like 90% of your soil mix, but that has not worked out well yet. So what Brian is going to be doing is he's going to take like a mixture of 10% wood fiber and 90% peat. And then he's going to make a mixture of 20% wood fiber, 80% peat, 30%, 40%. He's going to test these different mixtures to see how well they do. And he's actually going to plant tomatoes and marigolds in these because those seem to be good species for testing the purpose. And now you mentioned cocoa peat. Now cocoa core is the husk of coconuts, which is another substrate that is used. I don't know if he's going to be testing this with cocoa. I think he's doing this primarily with different mixtures with peat.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Go ahead. Anybody else? Other questions? All right. So have you started to look at, and because I could keep going, have you started to look at NSF grants at all?
Yes, I did the initial process with NSF, National Science Foundation, where they have you give them what they call a pitch.
Yep.
So, which is just a basic description of what you're doing. And I got a response from them asking for more information.
Oh, that's a good sign.
Yes, and so I asked Brian to help me with that information, and I think he's in the process of doing that. Now, NSF is primarily oriented toward helping people in the laboratory overcome the difficulty of initial discovery of a new technology, right? And that is not quite what's going on here. You see, the basic technology that I'm going to be using, which is twin screw extruders, is not a new technology. It's been around for 100 years, but it's only been applied for this for, I don't know, a couple of decades, but it's not the technology itself is not new or innovative. What is new or innovative is using Western wood species to do this. At least that's how I look at it.
Yep.
And it's also innovative to introduce this kind of industry into the forestry situation here in California. Now, whether they consider that to be the kind of innovation that they're looking for, I don't know. And I think what I want to do is to request a phone conversation with them to ask that question. Now, another thing that the NSF emphasizes very strongly is the effects of what you're doing, what the consequences will be. They were looking for things that have high impact.
Yep.
And I think it's easy to argue that this has very high impact because it helps with forestry issues to reduce impacts of forest fire. It reduces carbon impacts. It basically sequesters carbon, and it's providing a product that the horticultural industry really needs. So I have some strong arguments for NSF, but the basic mission of NSF is to overcome technical hurdles for new technologies. And this doesn't exactly qualify for that. So I don't know where that's going to go.
Well, I think your impact arguments are strong, and the fact that you don't quite have, what process you want to use based on what exists today, but that could be modified in some way, shape, or form based on the findings and after the testing, right? So that would
Yes.
in and of itself be an iteration that is new. But I think the impact is, having worked with a couple of different people on their SBIR submissions, the more impact you have, you're applying something to do something new to help substitute, to help solve a problem, right? But it also has these other positive effects. They love that kind of stuff. So I worked with someone who was doing a rhizome, and hello, rhizomes are all over the place, right? But they were using that rhizome in a different way that had a different impact based on how it was processed, and not because the technology of how it was processed was new, but how they had many different options and how it could be processed, and what those processes could then be used for was what they bought into. She not only got the phase 1, but she got the phase 2.
Oh,
Now, on one of her phase 1s, on her phase 1, she also had kind of a stretch goal, and that was in there that she couldn't quite make, but it did not keep her from getting the phase 2. So just
stretch goal. Explain
it wasn't that somebody asked for it. She just decided to throw it in there. So this rhizome is as if corn and bamboo had a baby. Okay, so that's what the end product is, but how it can be processed can be everything from animal bedding for tractor supply to biofuel. There's a huge, there's 10 things in between, right? So, and so one of the things she was thinking about was to see if she could do a proof of concept around biodiesel. She couldn't quite get there, right, in the whole scheme of things, but it was enough to convince them that there was enough there to go to a phase 2.
Good.
Yeah, so I'm not saying put something in there that's wild. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that they are very big on impact, carbon sequestration, making those proof of concept, etc. That's all.
Good. Yes. Well, I will pursue it. Brian has kind of taken his time with getting the information to me, so I need to kind of prod him, I guess. But yes, I want to get back to them. And are they receptive to having phone conversations and consultations, or do they just follow the process that they outline on their website?
Just like any other grant making entity, they will take your calls, but they won't say, oh, you should do this. You have to have your questions ready. And then they'll let you know whether they can actually answer them or not, and or in what detail, right? Because a lot of times they'll say, well, in some cases, they'll say, oh, please refer to this section, right, of the notice of funding opportunity, or they'll say, that sounds like, that sounds interesting, or, they have to be very cautious in how they answer things. They can't tilt,
Right.
they can't put their thumb on the scale.
Right. So my main question for them is whether this fits their definition of innovation well enough that they would be interested in pursuing it.
Well, you have, the benefit of having the phone call is to build relationships.
Mm.
And I find that to be very useful with grant making entities. And then over a period of time and over the last couple of years, I can then sense from the way they answer something, whether it's yes or no. But yeah, that'll be a good opportunity for you to set up these calls, ask these questions, and do research on people who are doing things in the same area.
Mhm.
Clean Start at all?
No, not yet. But yeah, they're going to, because they're going to be up there the week after next. They're up in Plumas the week
Gotcha.
after
with
next.
the-
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that whole.
Okay.
So what Heather was saying is, have I connected you to Clean Start yet? And no, I have not, but you will be in the next 2 weeks because they're coming up to the Plumas County Fair. But I will make the intros in the meantime. We have them in town today.
I was gonna say, too bad you could come tomorrow to the workshop.
Hey, you busy tomorrow, Jeff?
Tomorrow. I don't know. I have to look at my calendar. Why? What's up?
Tomorrow, creep to this Patty. Yes, that's Shakespeare. Tomorrow we're hosting a workshop in Paradise. And the Clean Start people are going to be running the workshop, and it's like billions in clean tech and how you can get your grubby little hands on it. It's actually not the name of it. That's my paraphrasing. But it's about seizing the business opportunity in clean tech and the money that's coming down the pike from the administration, and how lucky for us, Gary Simon has read through the Inflation Reduction Act, all 2020 pages of it. And this is no lie, I think it's like 2,200 pages. And he has mapped out where the money is. So if you want money for this, it's in the Department of Commerce. If you want money for this, it's in Department of Energy. If you want money for this, it's in EV charging. So if you want, he's mapped it all out. And I think it might be a very useful workshop for you. I know it's an hour, 2-hour drive, but it might be a very useful workshop for you.
It sounds like it definitely would be. I have a couple of things scheduled for tomorrow. What's the time frame on that? Do you know?
Noon, and we're buying lunch.
Noon. That's good. There's a NSF seed fund presentation that goes between 11 and 12 on the basics of how they operate, which I was going to attend. And I have something before then. Are they doing Zoom for the presentation in Paradise?
Yes. No, we're not.
But,
We could.
we could figure
Isaac
something-
said, hold on 1 second. Let us confer.
We'll figure something else. We'll figure something out, or we can record it. We'll figure it out.
Isaac, you gonna figure it out?
Figure it out.
Get to work, buddy.
Well, he volunteered. No. All right. But you're gonna help him. All right. So I guess we'll figure it out.
Okay, yeah, please let me know. And I think I need to be here for the 2 things that I have tomorrow morning,
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
No problem.
but I definitely want to hear from that gentleman. It sounds like he's very knowledgeable about,
Yeah, he
Good
is. He's a
situation.
walking encyclopedia.
I
It's
mean, if
awesome.
anything, it sounds like you're gonna be him in a few weeks anyways, right?
Yeah,
So,
but I want him to
the
start.
whole presentation would be good.
Yeah. So my next question has to do with how many people, say hypothetically, everything falls into place, you do, your research over the next, you get funding to do your research over the next year and a half, you get an SBA loan for the equipment, you get, some sort of something from the county that helps you with, new businesses and new jobs. I mean, I'm just like, just blue skying here. How many people would you be employing in Plumas County?
Probably 5 or 6 initially. So initially, we would be operating at 40 hours a week. When you buy big equipment like this, ideally you want to run it 24 hours a day because you're only producing material when the machine is running. So anyway, it would be a pilot program to operate 40 hours a week, and we would employ 5 or 6 people.
And then how are
including myself.
you going to get the biomass to your location? And biomass meaning down trees, etc., like burn trees, like they have. Majority of them
Right.
have. Yes.
Right. So that is kind of an established industry here, moving of wood chips. And that is the way it's handled is well, with different entities. So it's like with the Forest Service, they contract with different contractors to go in and do thinning work in different sections of the forest. So those private contractors will go in there and do the thinning. Once the private contractor has thinned out the air section of forest that they were contracted to, the material that then belongs to them, it belongs to that contractor. So what's that contractor going to do with that material? That contractor could chip up the material, put it in chipper trucks, and ship it off to a waiting market if there is a market. Often there is not a market. So the contractor doesn't do that because he can't sell the material. So if I can offer enough money to the contractor to make it worth his while to bring the material to me, then he will be motivated to do that, and he will do so. The private timber industry harvests a lot of logs, and they leave behind slash, which is, what they can't use for logs. And they want to get rid of that, but they can't because it costs too much money. So they leave it in the forest. If I was offering enough money for chips to motivate them to chip up that material and bring it to me, then they would do so. And then there's the Fire Safe Council, which does thinning projects. And again, they will have contractors. And the question is the contractor motivated to bring the material to me? So I think that I can pay enough to motivate these contractors to bring truckloads of chips to me.
What is the current truckload price that motivates them?
They go by what's called bone dry ton. Now, no set of chips that comes out of the mountains is bone dry. But what they do is they actually do a calculation with moisture content to determine what the chips would weigh if they were bone dry, right? So you can calculate from the moisture content, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, somewhere between $50 and $100 per bone dry ton is what's usually paid.
Okay.
I've been doing my rough calculations for business plan, et cetera, based upon $100 per bone dry ton. That's on the higher end of things. Another factor is how far away is the project that's being done. If it's 150 miles away, then it's not going to be worth it unless you pay them, who knows, $150, $200 a ton. If the project is 10 miles away, then that's very different. So the chip market is highly variable. It depends on a lot of factors. The sense I get is that the price can vary a great deal according to circumstances. And it's sort of a something that gets handled in the moment according to current circumstances.
Okay. Last question. Do you know what the price per pound is for alternative peat moss? Like, do you know what you would possibly get paid by the, Bagaros or Sun Grow? Well, not say you were going after Sun Grow, but, or large nurseries. Do you know what you would be paid for your raw material?
Yeah, I don't. And that's one of the main pieces of information that I need to get by calling these different suppliers. I do know that you can buy peat moss up in near Hudson Bay for about $1.75 a cubic foot, compacted in bales. Now, that's FOB, free on board, which means you haven't paid for any transportation yet. Then you're going to have to pay trucking costs from there to California, which is 2,000 miles. So my calculations tell me that a truckload of baled compacted peat moss bought in Canada is going to cost $5,000, and then the transportation to bring it to California is going to cost about $4,000. So what I'm thinking now, before I have all the information, is that I will charge the same price that they charge for peat, which is $1.75 a cubic foot, but the transportation costs will be so much less that they would save like about $3,000 per truckload to get the material delivered.
Okay. Okay.
But that's based on a minimum of information. And I would not be surprised if suppliers or if buyers would be reluctant to buy a new unproven product for a price like that. I just don't know what they'd be willing to pay just yet. And I may have to knock the price way down at first until people get used to it and are confident with it. As the horticultural industry and the agricultural industry is very cautious and conservative because it's easy to, have a crop failure.
Yeah, it's interesting, when I looked up some market research while we were talking, how they categorize peat moss in an energy. It's an energy, yeah, I sent you both of the things. I've already sent both of the reports to you while we're sitting here, but I just found that really interesting. I think that there's something there.
Well, I can tell you that Finland is the largest producer of peat moss in the world. They produce, I think, close to 8 million tons a year. And most of that goes to heating homes in Finland. So they burn it as a fuel. We don't burn peat as a fuel here in North America. They were and I think they still do in Ireland and England, but that's being eliminated because of environmental issues. And so actually it will be illegal to use peat in any form in the UK by 2030, I believe. But it is still used as a fuel, and in Finland and in other countries, I think they have very large electrical generation plants similar to coal burning plants that are designed to burn peat.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I do remember reading a story as a kid, and I don't remember what the story was, but it was about that. One of the things they mentioned in there was that they would dry the peat moss to use as fuel.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
There's an
And
article about that recently too, about Finland. And
yeah, so I sent you two different reports, and in one of the reports it talks about the rise in industrialization and different agricultural purposes to boost the peat market. So, and was energy. So I just thought that was really interesting. All
Yeah.
right, well, I have abused my time. Kent or Clint, do you have any questions?
I don't have any
Oh, okay.
questions, but I do have a comment for you, Jeff. You mentioned being somewhat reluctant to make cold calls, but this presentation has been one long cold call. And I think you've done excellent. In fact, I think I would encourage you, like when you call some of these businesses about the peat moss market, you may want to see if you could even do a Zoom, because you have excellent presentation skills. You're very believable. You're very organized, very chronological, very factual, and you have a lot of data. So I think that is really part of your presentation. So I certainly wouldn't be reluctant, Jeff. The first time we met you at the Indian Valley Innovation Hub, we were thoroughly impressed with your presentation, and I know your presenting skills have nothing but zoomed since then. So keep up the good work.
Wow.
Thank you, Clint.
All right, then not
Love
a
it.
real obvious pun there. All right, Kent, any questions? You're on mute.
Unmute Kent.
Is this okay?
Yeah. Hi.
Okay. I heard about the burning wood in the European Union because it's supposedly bio-friendly, although it has more emissions than coal. But it sounds like we're addressing that. So
Yes.
anyway, that's my only comment.
The last thing I have to say, Clint, is, excuse me, not Clint, Jeff. The last thing I have to say, Jeff, is we'd love to see you put together some slides on this. Okay, and I think it'll help you make your presentation, refine it, and then it'll you talking through it is perfect. It's great because it's right off the top of your head. You're not reading off of any slides, but having the slides be the visual to support what you're talking about, especially when you have charts and things to that fact, and pictures of the equipment and market sizes, etc. That's going to be real helpful.
Okay, so you mean like a PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, and that will also help you when you're talking with people on Zoom.
Yeah.
And it'll also be good. They're good leave behinds, so to speak. I mean, that's
Mhm.
and sometimes they're good door openers. So you never know. You don't know what somebody's going to react to.
How many slides?
Oh yeah, well, if it's up to me, I subscribe to the Guy Kawasaki methodology of slides, which I no more than 10 slides, 30-point font for the old people in the back, and no more than 20 minutes. But nowadays, so he promoted that, in the 90s. Nowadays, I think no more than 6 minutes, and then you leave some good juicy slides for the Q&A that you can pull up and look like you're super brilliant, or even more brilliant than you already are. And so maybe a couple more slides for to be prepared for Q&A.
Yeah, as a building inspector, I went to numerous seminars where we sat for 2 hours, and they committed death by PowerPoint
That's
onto
by
it.
PowerPoint, yes.
Yes.
And yeah, so repeated slides with just text on them puts people to sleep. So
Absolutely.
Yep.
what I imagined is some text, but pictures, as many pictures as I can come up with. I don't know how many pictures, interesting photos I can come up with on this particular subject, but that plus basic text with salient points. So yeah,
How
when
you're
I
solving the problem is what you want to focus on.
Right. How are you
Right.
solving the problem? How big the global market is? How the impact, right, etc. Yeah. So go ahead and do a draft. I'll be happy to look at them and give you some feedback.
Okay, thank you.
At
Right
your
now,
convenience.
I'm in the midst of putting together a website.
Oh,
I
good.
should have that done pretty soon.
Okay.
And my next task then will be to put together a PowerPoint presentation like that.
Okay. Awesome.
You might want to
Awesome.
attend Sacramento, one of the two, just
Yeah.
for
Well, we'll
to see
give
other
you.
presentations. and
Yeah, you
others.
might want to attend a couple of other 1 million cups, whether they be ours or Sacramento. And then you can or go on to our site where it says where you can also look at past presentations, so you get a feel for how other people have attacked this. Or
Okay.
approached, I guess is a better word.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right.
Perfect.
Well, let's give it up one more time for
Yeah,
Jeff.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeff. Again, just a second. My name is Nicholas Stamper. I've been your host and organizer, and then Eva Shepard is our chapter lead. And we also like to thank our sponsors, Chico Start, Grow Tech, Global Entrepreneurship Network, Bill with Ferguson, NorCal SBDC, Startup Grind, and Stobel Coffee. Here are some of our events coming up. Grow Tech Fest 2023, October 11th through 12th. Both days are at the Sierra Nevada Big Room. The early bird ticket sale ends August 31st. Later this evening, Paradise in the Park with Chico Start and Clean Start from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. We will be there. And then again tomorrow, July 20th, the Lunch and Learn, Grow and Thrive with Clean Start at Ridge Start workshop 12 to 1 p.m. And then also tonight, the downtown Chico Farmers Market. Oh, tomorrow night, I'm sorry. The downtown Chico Farmers Market with Clean Start and Chico Start, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Sorry. Again, I'd love to thank Jeff Gree for his amazing presentation. Next Wednesday, we have openbox.ai presenting. Please sign up for our newsletter, the Chico Start newsletter, as well as the 1 Million Cups newsletter. And then I'm going to leave everyone off on this one quote from an uncredited source. If you work hard at your job, you'll make a living. But if you work hard on yourself, you'll make a fortune. How wise, how deep.
Nice, that is deep.
Good Lord, we went there.
We were there.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. Yeah. You have a great
Thank
rest of your
you.
day. Keep it
Okay.
up.
Be in
Tuning.
touch.
Okay, we'll be in touch.
Right.
Thanks, everyone.
I was
Yeah,
gonna
bye,
say that,
guys.
don't forget to tune in. Like,